Now we are ready to get into the Cisco Unity Express installation and configuration. In the last nugget, we looked at what Unity Express was all about, where it fits, and some of its killer whiz-bang wow features, and now we're going to set it up. And I'm going to try and smoosh it all into a single nugget. We'll see if it happens. It'll be long if so, because there's a little bit to this, and some of it's really kind of not so user-friendly, meaning it's not something you would think to do to get this appliance running. So the first thing I'm going to do is walk you through how we can get to the CUE module inside of your router, because the router sees it as separate. It's a separate device inside of it. It's not part of the iOS. We'll then get the right files copied onto the CUE engine, and that's the Unity appliance files and licensing files. We'll then connect CME to CUE, and this is where I say it's not really that logical, but it's something that has to be done to get the CME to route calls over to CUE. And then finally, we'll walk through the CUE initialization wizard and get it running so it has voice mailboxes for our users. The first thing that takes a little getting used to is accessing the Unity Express module. Now, even though it's on your router, it's not your router. It's more appropriate to say Unity Express is in your router, but it's not a part of your router. It's a separate little appliance. So what happens is the CUE module will show up as a service engine interface in your router interface configuration. Let me show you. I'm going to jump over to my 2801 router and do a show IP interface brief. And you can see this is my router that's running right now. I've got all my inner VLAN routing and so on. And right here is this service engine interface, which we haven't touched yet. It's currently shut down. This service engine is almost like a link to the Unity Express module inside of the router. So think of it almost as if there's the router, and if we were to look inside of that router, there's this Unity Express AIM module, and then the NM, the network module version, shows up the same way as a service engine. And it's almost like we need to build this bridge crossing from the router. You know, it's almost like we walk across this service module interface to the IP address of this Unity appliance and then access it and manage it from there. So in order to access the Unity appliance, we have to configure a point-to-point link from inside the CME router to the service module inside of the router. So, well, without I'm thinking, how do I expound on that? I can't. There's just this virtual interface, this service module interface, or service engine interface, which connects to the module or the service module inside of your router. And we're going to build a point-to-point link, meaning this is almost like a point-to-point interface that allows us to access that Unity Express engine. So there's two ways that we can build this point-to-point link. My favorite is this one. Assign an IP address directly to the service engine interface, and then, so you essentially, if we could visualize inside of the router, you have this service engine interface. You assign an IP address to that, and then you can remotely assign an IP address to the Unity module. So you, in essence, build a point-to-point link from the service engine to the Unity module by assigning IP addresses directly. Now, Cisco's preferred method is this one. I'm not too hip on it. It says use an existing loopback interface to assign an IP address to the service engine interface. What that means is you can have a loopback interface on your router, and loopbacks are commonly used for testing purposes and so on. Let me just jump over to the router real quick, and I'll go into global config and do interface loopback 0, and I could assign an IP address to this, 192.168.1.1, and now I have this brand new interface that pops up out of nowhere that says this is now a loopback or virtual interface, and it's always online as long as the router is online. Now Cisco says that you should use one of those to assign an IP address. So say you've got 192.168.1.1 on that loopback, just like I created. You can use the IP unnumbered command. I mean, I can go under the service engine and type the command IP unnumbered loopback 0. And what that does is allow that service engine to borrow the IP address of the loopback interface to where it can say, hey, I'll use your IP address. Let me show you, because it looks like it's going to be a duplicate, but it's not. Interface loopback 0, I'll do interface service engine 0/1, and I'll do IP unnumbered loopback 0. And what happens then when I do that show IP interface brief is I can see that this and this are now using the same IP address. It borrows it from the loopback 0 interface, and then I can assign the other side, the Unity module, maybe 192.168.1.2, and that builds the point-to-point link. Now, Cisco prefers this way. This is the reason they say this is our preferred method, is because they say, well, if you have a loopback interface already on your router, that keeps you from wasting an IP subnet right here between these two devices. It's because it's a virtual link, so they're saying why waste an IP subnet when you already have one wasted on a loopback interface somewhere on your router. And I would agree with that. If you have a loopback interface on your router already that you're not really using for anything else, or maybe you're using it for some other things, but you just want to borrow that subnet and use it here. It saves IP addresses, but the problem, in my opinion, is once you do that, you have to set up a default route. It's on the Unity module. It's kind of a hassle. So what I'm not going to expound on it. I'll talk more about this one in a second. My preferred way is easier. I like it because it's easier. It's less commands. So what I'm going to do is, let's say I want the service engine to use the subnet. Let's do interface service engine 0/1, and I'll give it the IP address 192.168.100.1, and I'll even use a 30-bit subnet mask, so the waste is at a minimum. I'm only using essentially 4 IP addresses: the network, this one, 2 for the other side, and then the broadcast. 4 IP addresses for this. So I'm trying to emphasize I'm minimizing waste. I don't need the loopback system. So once I've got that typed in, I need to assign the Unity module an IP address. This is where it gets a little weird. I'm assigning my side, meaning this is the router's IP address on the service engine interface. Now I need to assign the module, the Unity AIM module, an IP address inside, and I do that by using the service module IP address command. So I'll say service module IP address is 192.168.100.2, 255.255.255.252, and hit enter, and that assigns an IP address. It's as if I virtually communicated from my service engine interface, I'm the .1, to the Unity interface on the other side, and they became the .2. I'm the service engine, they are the service module, and this is the point-to-point link between them. See how it's kind of weird? It's strange because you're assigning the remote IP address under the same interface. It seems like there should be some service module interface, but there's not. This is the router's way of remotely assigning the Unity IP address. Now you also have to give the service module, the Unity module, a default gateway to say, you know what, if Unity needs to access the rest of the network, which it does, it's going to go through 192.168.100.1, meaning it's going to come through the service engine on my router to access the rest of the network. Once I've done that, I just type in no shutdown and power that service engine up. Now, when I look, I can see my service engine is up. It's coming up as we speak. Okay, it shows the other side is currently down. That'll change once we get the Unity module up and running. But this is now my link, there we go, to the other side that allows me to communicate with the Unity Express module. That is my preferred way. Just assign those 3 commands and you're good to go. The loopback interface, if you want to go that route, I showed you creating the loopback interface using the IP unnumbered command. But if you do that, you also have to create a static route on your router. And you would do, for instance, if I did this, my loopback is 192.168.1.1, and I said the Unity module would be maybe 192.168.1.2, and I use this IP unnumbered, I would have to create a static route. It would look like this: IP route 192.168.1.2, and then I would give it a subnet mask 255.255. 255.255. This looks weird. And I would do service, I'm going through my mirror here, service engine 1/0 or 0/1. What was it? It was 0/1 in this case. Now let me explain that. What this route is it's considered a host route. You see, the subnet mask is all 255s, meaning specifically that IP address is available through service engine 0/1. And that saves the router the confusion because it's thinking, okay, if you do IP unnumbered, I've got one link to 192.168.1 here, and I've got another link to 192.168.1 here. So when you're accessing 1.2, meaning the Unity engine, which do I use? The loopback or the service engine? Because remember, the router thinks the loopback is a real interface too. So we need to tell it, and that's what this IP route command does, we need to tell it that the remote IP address is available through the service engine interface. That's why I type that interface right here, rather than using the loopback. Now, once we have this link configured, whether you did it the easy way, in my opinion, assigning IP address directly to the service engine, or use Cisco's loopback method, we can then access the Unity Express appliance through the router iOS. The way we do that is by using the command, and this is from privilege mode. Notice what mode we're in. Service module, and you can see service engine. I'm saying I want to access the service module through the service engine 0/1. That's my service engine number right here. And then it's going to ask me, what do I want to do? Do you want to do a password reset, a reload, a hardware reset? Do you want to access the session? And this is going to be what we're doing. Or do you want to shut it down and get statistics or status or anything like that? This is essentially your control of the Unity appliance from the router. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, and all that kind of stuff. Cisco recommends before you shut down your router, you actually shut down the appliance inside. It's because it's a separate operating system. It's not the router. So doing a shutdown will allow it to gracefully shut down rather than getting a power off. That being said, I've never done that. I always forget. I never remember to shut down the Unity Express module, and it's been working fine for 3-4 years now. So it's doing just great. So if I want to access the Unity Express session and access the appliance, I type that in. I type in service module service engine 0/1 session. Now once I do, I can see I'm in this land called test. Okay, now from here, this is the host name of the service module. The question mark works kind of the same way. It kind of feels like a real router, but it's more of a router emulated through Linux. So I'm going to get into privilege mode. If I can, there is no password. I just hit enter. So I'm now in privilege mode, and the first thing that I'm going to do is reset this configuration, meaning I'm going to blow everything away, restore it back to the factory defaults. So in order to do this, because there's some config, it's not named test by default, somebody had to give it that name, so I'm going to wipe this module out. I'm going to take it offline. First of all, it says, warning, you're about to do this, are you sure? You know, nobody will be able to get to their voicemail. That's okay, yes, I want to go offline. So, you see the prompt changes almost to like a global config mode, but it says offline. And now I can type in restore factory. I kind of like the way the context-sensitive help works on here. It's kind of like the old cat iOS, where instead of going to a separate line when you hit tab, it completes it for you. Because remember, we're not in the real iOS. We're in a simulated one. So I'm going to do restore factory default. And hit enter. It says, hey, we're going to wipe everything out. This is not reversible. Do you want to do this? Sure. So, system will be restored when it reloads. So I hit reload, and it's going to go through the boot process of CUE. It's going to walk through and boot up. Now, this is where you truly feel the pain of the AIM module. The AIM module takes about, I would say 10 minutes on a good day, 10 minutes to completely boot up. And what you'll see is it's actually going to, right now it's just shutting down. It's going to restart the system. It'll go through kind of a Linux boot process, and it's booting off of the Flash module. And back when they created these AIM modules, Flash wasn't as fast as it was today in some of the newer Flash modules. So it just runs dog slow. And you'll see Linux boot, and then it'll just go into this waiting state. Don't think something is broken. And I'll pause the video because I'm obviously not going to keep it here for the entire 10 minutes, but it'll go into this waiting state where it's just start ticking seconds. You'll see it waiting 1, 2, 3, and it'll go into the 300s, maybe in the 400s and the 500s. Some people think when they first get in there and they see that waiting, they're like, oh, something's broken. Or they wait and then they go, well, it's just a never-ending counter. It does end. It's just booting. So just give it some time, and it's going to go through its boot process. It's just powering itself on. So I talked long enough so you can see the Linux kernel boot on this module, and you can see it's a completely separate operating system from the iOS. It's doing its own thing, and it's going to go through and initialize the Cisco service engine, if you will, or Cisco Unity. Now, once it is ready to go, it actually walks you through a mandatory wizard, which we're going to see. Wizard, and if you check it out, it says, wait a sec, only Ethernet 0 exists. We must be running on an AIM module. So the Linux kernel just recognized that it's running on the AIM module. What was I saying? Oh, when you first boot up, it's going to take you through a mandatory wizard, kind of like when you have a router or a switch with no configuration on it, and it says, do you want to go through the initial config dialog? And everybody's like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Well, here you have to. Except it's okay. It's not a horrendously long and outdated one. It's just going to give you the base configuration of the CUE to allow you to configure that. And if you notice, it just showed its routing table. It's got the right default gateway that we assigned, 192.168.101, which sends it through the router. And this is, again, just going through its boot process. So I think I've run out of interesting things to say at this point. So what I'll do is I'll pause the recording, and oh, there we go. Just as I said, it comes to the initial config. So forgive me, I said it was going to go to this waiting prompt. It does that on subsequent reboots after you have this initial configuration. This is the one-time configuration process that you'll walk through that will allow you to configure this CUE appliance from the command line. So once we're ready to start that wizard, we just go into the configuration and hit yes, I'd like to start now. Say, are you sure? If you don't go through this wizard, check it out. It says, if you do not wish to continue, the system will halt and it can be safely removed from the router. So this little wizard is not an option, so it's kind of ironic that it says, are you sure? So we'll say yes. And it says, what is the host name? So we can now name this Unity module just like we do a router. And I'll say this is our CBT CUE. CBT CUE with no space, no underscore. It says, what is your domain name? And we'll do nugget. My good old backspace key doesn't work. What was the command for backspace? Control. Yes, when you're doing this, you're in a true Linux environment, and a lot of times the backspace key does not work. So, hang on, let me pause the video. I figured it out. It's on a router, it's actually Control H to go backspace. On this Linux kernel, it's the delete key. It's not backspace, it's delete. So we hit delete and it'll go back, and we'll do nugget. What was I doing? nuggetlab.com is our domain name. So I'll hit enter. It says important DNS. You know, this is where you configure DNS servers. Would you like to use DNS for CUE? And I'll say no, I don't really care. It says, warning, if you do not set up DNS, you'll have to use IP addresses. Are you sure? Sure, no problem. It says, what is the IP address of the primary NTP server? Unlike DNS, this is one that you cannot skip or do not want to skip or put in an invalid IP address, because CUE uses the time for everything. All your messages are time stamped, and logging and everything like that. So your time, your clock on this appliance has to be accurate. My router is set up as an NTP master. And by the way, you can set up your router to do that just by typing NTP master from global config mode. So it can supply the clock. I'll just hit enter and it says, oh, I found that server. Now if that wasn't invalid, if it wasn't an NTP server, it would say, hey, I can't contact that. What else do you want to use? It needs an NTP server. So it says, what is your secondary NTP server? Well, I don't have one. I'll bypass that one. It says, okay, what is your current location? I will say, I am in the Americas. What is your country? I am in the United States, which is 45. And where in the United States are you? What time zone are you in? And I will say 10. In Arizona, we're very special. We get our own time zone. So I'll hit enter. And it says, is this all correct? Is this the current date and time? I look, and it is correct. It is currently 8:31 in the morning, bright and early. So I will say, yes, that is okay. It goes through and configures the system. And this is essentially the initial config. Now, the last thing it's going to ask me for is an administrative username and password, but this is where the true initialization and boot process begins. This is where that wait menu, there it is. I'm glad you can see it. This is where that pops up, and this will wait for, I'd say 300-400 counts. So, this is where if it's 8:30 in the morning, you get a cup of coffee. All right, it's done. It only went up to 247. I swore I could have remembered it had been so much higher. It's funny how when you remember the waiting thing, it's like, oh, it totally went to like 900,000. It's some massive number. And it's like, oh, I guess 247. So about 4 minutes or so to get through its little waiting phase. Then after that is finished, it's going to come to the final step, which is the administrator account creation. This is going to be the administrator account used to administer Unity from the command line and using the web-based interface. So you'll want to remember this one. And we'll use the user ID of JC. The password, I'll make Cisco. Oh wait. Oh, I've done it now. Hang on, let's try this. Confirm password. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, here we are. We're now at CBT CUE at the, I guess you could call it the user mode prompt. I'm going to get into privilege mode. My password will be nothing, because as of right now I'm accessing it via the command line. I'm logged in using a default account through the service module. I'm not accessing the web-based GUI or anything like that, and I haven't logged out as of yet. So the admin ID is not active. Now we come to the point where we are getting to the configuration, or I should say installation, of the CUE software. Now, first off, this may not be necessary. The router that you buy and the AIM card or network module that you buy may already have Cisco Unity Express on it, and probably will. Well, I know it will. It will have some version of Unity Express already installed. However, they're coming out with new versions of Unity Express every single day. If you want to check it out, just go to the Cisco website and shoot on over to their download section. Matter of fact, let me get this all on the screen. This is in the Cisco download software area, and I just clicked on voice software. And if you scroll down, you see, of course, the Call Manager Express software right there. Scroll down more. Here's our Unity Express software. No, look at that. Just how many versions have come out. So if you want the latest version, you need to click on the version that you want. And you'll see that we have the AIM and network module software and language files. That's the main place you're going to go. There's all kinds of other files, and the most essential is the software and the license files. You see other utilities and sample auto-attendant scripts and things like that, but you'll need a license file to install as well. So if you click on that, you'll be temporarily overwhelmed while you look through all the different downloads they have available. This is 100 mailbox version for the NMCUE EC and NME CUE only, and you just scroll down and you look for the one, in my case, for the AIM module one, which is down here. You see that there's a 50 mailbox version for use with the AIM CUE, and this is for one that works with Cisco Unified Call Manager. So that's the full version of Call Manager, not Call Manager Express. I'm looking for the license file that is going to work with Unified Call Manager Express, or CME, that's running on my router. So that's the one I've already downloaded and installed. If you go to the AIM and Network Module software and language files, that's where you'll see all the different versions, for instance, of, languages, Dutch language, you've got the Korean language, where all the prompts are replaced with Korean language prompts and stuff like that for different locales, but I'm just doing this one right here. All package files except the language payloads. I don't need any other language but English associated with Unity Express. And you can see it's about 100 megabytes in size, so it's a pretty sizable download. So you download those guys, and then you can jump back over to your, where am I at? Here we go. To your CBT CUE, and you can use the software command. Software install, and you have the option of clean install, downgrade, or upgrade. So I can say, I want to do a complete clean install, and if you already have the package file copied over, you can type it in. Or you can type in the URL is going to be, and you can see this needs an FTP server. So you'll need to put the package files on an FTP server. And let me pull open my download directory. This is just my downloads. I don't know why this window keeps staying in front. But my downloads, just random files. Right here is the 50 mailbox license. And right here is the actual Unity files. If I go inside of that, you can see there's the installer, aimed, all that. We're looking for a package file. You have the language pack, and you have the actual package file where you can install. These are all part 1, and so on. So when you're looking to type in the URL, that's where you're going to type in the full URL that leads you to that package file. So let me get the FTP server running and see if we can get this copying over. Alright, I wanted to kick it back on before this software install completed. Let me just scroll back up here and show you that I did the software install clean right here, URL FTP, and I typed in my FTP server I just set up. One thing I did want to mention that it says, you saw I was fumbling earlier here because it was saying, oh, your username and password is correct. Well, CUE, and this is not really documented anywhere, that I could find, uses a default username and password for the FTP server of anonymous with a password of anonymous. And you can't specify the username and password anywhere in here. So you have to create a user account on your FTP server of anonymous and anonymous. I actually had to bust out Wireshark and do some packet sniffing to actually see which username and password it was doing. But down here, once it logged in, it downloaded the correct file, and then it was referred over to the part 1 installation. And right now it's going through and doing a clean install of all the software, and you can see it found the different versions of software, the American, the Spanish, the English, Italian, as it's going through all the different languages, that are supported. And right now, all it's doing is going through that clean software install process. Now, I also want to mention this same command needs to be done, and I'm going to pause it so we don't have to watch the whole install, but we need to do this same command when this install is done to install the license file as well. So this first one installs the software package. The second one, I'll go ahead and use that license file, which the license file you can download from Cisco. It's kind of a funny system. You just simply go to Cisco's website and download whatever license you need. So when I was showing you that before, I didn't have some special login or anything, just the general SmartNet contract login. And I just said, okay, I have a 50 user license, so let me download that file. It's kind of strange to have license files that anybody can have access to. So we'll let this thing go through its installation process. It's downloading and doing the install right now. And once that's finished up, I will bring it back. I was going to wait till the install was done, but one more thing I want to mention is that as it's going through the install process, downloading all the files and getting that set up, it's going to ask you what language you would like to use. Now, this gives you the selection of all the different languages that CUE support, but you remember back when I went to the software download page, let me bring it up over here. I downloaded the file that says, compressed archive of all package files except the language payloads, meaning that the language payloads don't come with this guy. So when it asks for the language, right here on our screen, whatever language I pick for CUE to support, I'm going to have to download the necessary language files from here. So, you have to go through the list and say, okay, am I doing Dutch? Am I doing French? Going down, down, down. I'm doing United States English. So, near the bottom, let's see. Let me just do this a little easier. English. That's British English, US English. So, this guy right here. Stop. Back. So this is the language file that has all of the voice prompts and everything for United States English. It's about 28 megs. If you do not download the correct language file and then go into the install and select a language that you don't have the language files for, it'll bomb out. It'll die during the install process. So in this case, I downloaded the English files. I'll hit 3 and then say I am done with the language selections. Hit enter, and it'll start downloading the English files to the CUE module so that it can install from there. And you can see it's accessing that language pack that I downloaded. So with that, now I will officially stop until the install is done. So while that install is going, I did have an official slide for this. You need to get the CUE software from the Cisco CCO. Don't forget the license files and language packs. That's what I was just mentioning. And then we can install both the install and the license file using this software install clean URL. Also, while the install is completing, we can configure the CME side to interface with CUE. On the CME side, we have to configure a SIP dial peer. CUE uses the SIP protocol for communication, so we'll be able to use some of our dial peer skills to create a SIP dial peer to interface with the Unity module. From there, we'll create 2 ePhone DNs for message waiting indicators, and I'll get into that in just a second. So let's start off with number 1. I'm going to create a SIP dial peer for the Unity module. Now this is still going through its install process right now, adding files and things like that. But this is like a telnet session. I can suspend it by using Control-Shift-6-X, and I'm back over to my main access server. So I can do Control-Shift-6-6-X and jump back over to my CME voice router. I had a telnet session within a telnet session. So I'm now back on my router, and I can go in, create that dial peer. I'll do dial peer. Let's just make it dial peer voice tag. We'll make it some number I haven't used yet. I'll just say 9,000. And this is going to be a voice over IP dial peer, because essentially, remember, even though the CME router and the CUE appliance are the same device, they're co-located in the same device, we act as if they were 2 separate ones. And I need a dial peer in order for the CME router to route calls over to that CUE module for people to get their voicemail or leave voicemails and things like that. So I'm going to do create this dial peer, and we'll say the destination pattern, and you just need a range of numbers that are not in use to assign to that Unity module. So we'll say, it doesn't have to be that many of them. I'll just say the 1900 range. So I've reserved 100 extensions or so for the CUE module. So if somebody dials 19 and any 2 digits, I'm going to send it to the session target IPv4 : and I'm going to go to the Unity module. 192.168.100.2 was the IP address we assigned that module. Now, from there, I need to say this is going to use the SIP protocol. This is how we change protocols when we're communicating with other devices. Back in the original dial peer section, I showed you creating dial peers. By default, they use H323 for communication. But I'm going to say session protocol is now going to be SIP v2, which is the standard that Cisco uses right now. I'll also use this command DTMF relay SIP notify. What this does is send all of the digits, any dialed digits, outside of the actual codec using a method known as SIP notify. Because sometimes the codec, it's designed for human voice, it doesn't relay the tones correctly. It's pretty rare, but SIP notify is a very reliable method to ensure that the digits people dial on their phone, like when they're listening to their voicemail and they say, oh, press 3 to delete the message, and they push 3, it needs to relay that digit over to the Cisco Unity appliance. So I've got the DTMF relay enabled, and then finally you notice that I had in here it must use G711, and you need to turn off VAD, voice activity detection, because otherwise it may cut out sounds of silence from the Unity module that need to be there. So to turn off VAD, it's simple, no VAD. And the codec, we know the codec command sets the codec, and I'm going to use G711 ULAW in the United States of America. So with that done, I've now created the dial peer that interfaces with the CUE module. That's the first step. I then need to create 2 ePhone DNs for message waiting on and message waiting off lights. Now this is going to be a little unique because we need to create a special digit or digits that the Unity module can dial into to turn that light, the message waiting indicator, on and off on the different phones when somebody has or does not have voicemail. So you'll create 2 DNs, one that turns it on and one that turns it off. You need to make sure that those guys do not overlap with your existing dial plans, and this is where it gets a little weird, allows enough digits to pass for your dial plan. So here's what that means. I'm going to go into my CCNA Voice router, go into global config, and I'll do ePhone DN, and I know I haven't used DN number 120, so I'll use that guy. So ePhone DN 120. For the number, I'm going to, oh, of course. Let's do 34. I know I haven't used, okay, now I'm curious. Show run in section of ePhone DN. By the time you've seen this series, you like that section command, don't you? Isn't that awesome, where you can just pull pieces of config? So we got ePhone DN 4, 5, 6. Oh, hit the V key. 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, 20, 31. Oh, I'm glad I checked. So let's just use 25 and 26. So ePhone DN 25. And the number that I'm going to assign to this ePhone DN, again, can't overlap with my existing dial plan, has to be unique. So I'll use, we'll say 1999 as my number. And then we need to allow enough digits to pass for your dial plan. This is where it gets a little unique because I have to say, well, my dial plan is 4 digits. All my users use 4-digit extensions, so I'll put ... What the Unity Express module is going to do is relay a message to turn off the light or turn on the light, whichever one I want. That's going to say, 1999, which we'll say is the on, and then for extension 3001. Or whatever extension it wants to turn on. This ePhone DN will receive it. It's kind of like effectively, I guess you could say, strips the 1999 and just says, okay, I need to turn the message waiting indicator on for 3001 or whatever one the Unity Express module wants to turn on. So in order for CME to know that this is what it's used for, I have to follow this up with the MWI on command, which says turn the message waiting indicator on when you see this number, which, again, the Unity Express module will send. I'll exit back out, hit the up arrow, because I've got one to turn it on, and then I've got another one to turn it off. We'll do number 199, we'll say 8, ... and we'll say that one is going to be MWI off, which disables the message waiting indicator. Now we're going to need to configure the CUE side so that it knows to send these correct identifiers to turn it on and off, but that's what's going to allow our phones to enable or disable their message waiting indicator lights. Groovy. So it looks like the CUE has done finished its clean install of the software. So it's going to walk me through that configuration wizard again, meaning you've installed a new set of software, reconfigure your router. So I'm going to go through that. I won't make you go through it again. And then we'll come back and now finally get into the web interface where we can interact with the CUE module. Oh, sorry guys. One more thing I have to show you because I thought it was pretty awesome. In the version of CUE that I had on my router, I can't remember what version it was. So somewhere between whatever version I was running and whatever version is available now, which is 3.2 that I downloaded, they improved the waiting process. So when it says waiting, it will actually tell you how far along in the boot process it is. And that's awesome because I'm sure Cisco got enough complaints of people sending back routers and CUE modules saying, all it does is say waiting for 2-3 minutes, and they don't wait the full time. So now it tells you how far along in the boot process it is. I love cool, simple stuff like that. All right, the last thing that we need to do is log into the web interface and initialize the CUE system. This will prepare the CUE for action and import some CME users into it so that we can have some mailboxes. So I pulled up a web browser and just pointed it to 192.168.100.2, which is my CUE IP address of the appliance inside the router. So once I get here, I log in, and the username is just going to be the username that I defined when I was going through the install process for CUE. Now I just want to show you, it's kind of funny. I made my my login admin. I changed it from JC to admin just because it was easier to remember. But I just got finished bragging about how Cisco did this, this installation percentage thing. I thought it was hilarious because I was like, oh, it's so great, so great. And it goes from like 22%, for a little while, 38%, and it's like 38% for, like 3 minutes, and then it comes down, it's like, oh, I'm done, 100%, we're done. So it's not that great. So I'm going to bring up my login here and do admin with the password of Cisco. That was the one I defined. Now it comes up and says you can either check out your current settings, run the initialization wizard, skip it, or just log off. Meaning skip it, well, everything is going manual, experts only. Now, I usually steer clear of wizards, but this one I would recommend. It gets everything up and running on your CME or CUE appliance really quick. So you click on that, it comes up and says, what is the username and password that you would want to use to authenticate to CME? Meaning that the CUE appliance is about to log in to CME, the Call Manager Express, and import the users that I have created in there, or essentially the people that I've defined with ePhones, and I've given them user accounts on CME. So the CME web administration was that Ninja admin. If you watched the nugget where I created the web administration, I think it was the productivity features part 2. So we created the Ninja admin and password of Cisco, hit next, and it says, aha, I see 4 users that you've created, and here's their primary extension. It found it through the ePhone DN that I had assigned to it. What would you like to do? Would you like to give them a mailbox? Would you like to define them as an administrator of some sort where they can get in and administer the CUE settings? And I'll say, no on that one. And would you like to set the call forward no answer and call forward busy? That's awesome. So it'll automatically set, underneath the ePhone DN where you can do call forward no answer and call forward busy. We were manually defining it before, but now we can have Unity Express set it to point to itself. So CUE will say, oh, okay, just send busy calls and calls that are not answering to me, which I am the voicemail number. So I hit next. Now it's going to come up and say, how would you like to configure, what options would you like for your users? Do you want to generate random passwords and PIN numbers for them? Password to log into the web interface, PIN number for telephone logins if they want to use the TUI to check their voicemail, or do you just want to start with blank ones and you type them in later? Then underneath you have the mailbox size, the maximum message size, and expire time on your messages. This is how many seconds maximum somebody's mailbox can be. So you could have 2,964 seconds worth of voicemails in your mailbox. The maximum message size per message, I would say probably could take that one down to 120. If people are leaving messages of 2 minutes or more, they need to be cut off. I mean, I don't want to listen to that voicemail. So this is, per user maximum message size, and then how long they can keep their messages in their mailbox before they're deleted. Now, these are all related to eating up the size of your storage on your Unity module. So the higher you set these values, the more storage you will need to store voicemails. Now, this is a general thing. You can overrule this on a user-by-user basis, but for now, we'll keep it at these settings right here and hit next. Now, you can see on step 4, last major step, is going to be what is the numbers that you want to set up for voicemail, for the operator extension, and so on. Let's walk through it. The voicemail number is going to be the number that people dial to access their voicemail, and it will also be the number that's assigned to the message button on their phone. Let me open up my IP communicator real quick. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain. There we go. Get my my Unity Express right here. So we've got these buttons on the phone. We were looking at the directories before and things like that. One of them will be the messages button. As of right now, it's dead. It doesn't do anything. So whatever number we define here will be assigned to that messages button. So they just hit the button on their phone, and it will dial the voicemail. So we'll make that. It's going to make it 9999. Now we have the voicemail operator extension. This is if you are checking your voicemail and one of the options is to press 0 to dial an operator. This will be the extension that it forwards to if somebody hits 0 during the voicemail process. So I can say, maybe my receptionist is 1000. Then you have the auto attendant access number. This is the number that will send people to the automated attendant system. When you have an incoming call on an FXO port or something, you can automatically have it sent to an auto attendant to say, thank you for calling our company. Right now all operators are busy. Press 1 to dial by name. The messages that they say. So we can just say, okay, 1950 will be our auto attendant number. And then finally, we have the auto attendant operator extension. This will be if somebody is in the automated auto attendant system, they're saying, okay, press 1 to dial by name and all that, and they say, I just need to talk to somebody, and they hit 0, who gets them then? In that case, we'll go ahead and direct it to the same person, 1000. Lastly, you have the administration via telephone number, meaning if you want to use your TUI, your telephone user interface, to record messages for the auto attendant and things like that, what number would you like to dial to get in? I'll say let's do 1951. Okay, so we've got all the major extensions defined. Now we can choose how the message waiting indicators are going to get turned on and turned off, the lights on the phone. Now by default, it uses SIP MWI notification mechanism of outcalling, meaning the CUE module or appliance will make a phone call, make a call using those ePhone DN extensions that we define, 19999 and 198 which where the ... will be the 4-digit extension it's turning on and off. Now, CME will understand that, and it can use outcalling, and that's been what CME has been using for a long time. But they also have a mechanism known as subscribe notify. Now, actually, before I hit that, notice how CUE automatically imported those things that we defined. We went through and defined the ePhone DNs, and CUE logged into CME, logged into the Call Manager Express, and found those ones that we configured. So if we want to use outcalling, that will work just fine. There's also a newer way called subscribe notify. Notice these guys gray out, which is where the CUE module uses SIP messages to turn the message waiting indicator on and off on the phones. Instead of actually dialing those message waiting numbers, placing an out call is what it's called, it can just send a SIP notify message saying, turn that on, turn that off, turn that on. This is considered now the more reliable, more modern method of doing it, subscribe notify, but either one of these will work just fine. So choose those and click on next. Now this is the final summary screen. It's gonna finish and commit, and this is the only time you can run the startup wizard without completely blanking out the configuration on CUE. So we're going to have it, hit finish to commit the installation. I'll hit finish and let it start going through its user creation and all that. But I want to make sure I mention as I'm going through this, the CCNA Voice and what this series prepares you for is getting CUE up and running to where we can now have users that have voicemail boxes and so on. It's good to go. Where the CCNA Voice ends is where you start getting into the day-to-day administration and creating auto attendance, things like that. That's where they have the complete, they call it the IPTX series, where you actually fully get into CME and CUE and get into all the features. So this is where I'm going to draw the line and show you we now have our 4 users that we had in CME set up. It's randomly generated passwords and PIN numbers that we can now print this out and give this to the users so that they can log in and start managing their phones. And they now have voicemail boxes that they can use. But this is where I'm going to draw the line and say, okay, from here, if you want to dive deeper into CUE, that's where you can check out the IPTX series. So that wraps up our world of Unity Express. To hit the high points, we have gone through and accessed the CME module to where we are able to get to it from CME using the service engine and service module combinations. We then got the right files onto CUE, copied over the license files, the new upgraded version of CUE using the software clean install process. We then connected the CME to CUE using that SIP dial peer and getting that created and going. And then finally, we walk through the initialization wizard to configure CUE and prepare it for the IP phones on our network. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.